Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending our meeting today. The appointed time has come and gone, so we're going to start the meeting today. I want to ask Representative Gloria Frazier if she would open us up in a word of prayer, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. May we bow our heads? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day here in the state of Georgia. We ask for your guidance and leadership to our members that are on public safety, our chairman, so that we continue to do the will of the people and the work here for the state of Georgia. We ask a special blessing upon the families in Ukraine, and we hope and pray that the leadership there will do what is necessary and what is humane to protect the citizens in Ukraine. We ask these blessings in your son, Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'm gonna let her get it because I can't get over there. We have 4 items on our agenda: Senate Bill 339, Senate Bill 404, Senate Bill 183, Senate Bill 259. And we anticipate adding another bill to the agenda, Senate Bill 319, here in just a little while. We're waiting on another person to come with that. So we'll start off with Senate Bill 339. Senator Kirkpatrick.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're operating from a substitute and it's LC 393423S. Is that what you have? Okay.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. This bill expands the definition of a Maddie's call to include missing military service members and veterans. The Maddie's call in our current code is an emergency alert for disabled and elderly persons. Local law enforcement takes the information and fills out a form that is transmitted to GBI, who then decides which region should be notified. This bill would allow an additional checkbox on the form for military personnel and veterans. We've also repeated news articles about missing active duty military personnel. We also know that veterans are at high risk for mental health issues, including suicide. This bill does not have any fiscal impact or any additional administrative burden on GBI or local law enforcement, and I really appreciate the help that I got from GBI with this bill. This bill fits nicely with our mental health efforts, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Let's see, 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for presenting this legislation. Can you just for clarification, is there any concern about adding, you're referring to active duty military, I'm guessing, is that correct? And then veterans?
Yes.
So has there been any concern or question as to why sort of they're incorporated into that?
I'm sorry.
I think my question is, so they are not all suffering from mental illness. So if someone were healthy and had just sort of decided to take a vacation, is any question come up as to why they're in this category?
I think that may be why the language in the substitute was changed to
Who are suspected?
military service members and veterans who are suspected of having
Okay.
a medical condition.
So, okay. So as long as I can just prove that we suspect, then we can go ahead and look for anybody. Okay.
Right.
I don't really have a problem with the bill. I just curious if anyone had raised any questions about that, but.
Not till
Okay.
today.
Well, good.
Thank you.
All right. Well, then, thank you.
All right, number 17.
Thank you,
Senator Frazier.
Mr. Chairman. Senator Kirkpatrick, I personally would like to thank you for this bill. I am a military spouse, retired, live in a military community in Augusta. And we have so many of our military retirees that are undiagnosed. Many of them are diagnosed with a series of diagnoses, mental diagnoses. So I can say I can support this because in my community, we've all at one time had to look for a retiree that had wandered away from home. Looked very healthy, but had not been diagnosed properly. And we had to find that person. So my question to you is, other than this is a good bill, would this go out as an Amber Alert? If that person is missing, how do we get this out to the community to know that we have, for example, a veteran that is missing and we need to locate?
No, ma'am, it wouldn't go out as an Amber Alert. It would go out as a Maddie's call, which is the different category for disabled adults. And so the way that works is that this would be reported to local law enforcement.
Okay,
And then they would transmit the information with this form that will now hopefully have a checkbox if the person's military or veteran. And then GBI would decide where that needed to be transmitted, statewide or regional or just the local area.
thank you. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Thank you. We heard this bill in subcommittee, in Gerald Green subcommittee B last week, and it passed out with a favorable consideration. What would be the desire of the committee at this time? Motion made and second that we do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Do pass. Thank you.
sir.
You're on the rules. You're not ready to go yet, are you, Senator
I
Moss?
understand there's a substitute coming that
Okay.
I'm aware by saying I'm agreeable. I just don't know what's in. Now,
Good.
if
Well-
somebody could do my stuff, I could just take care of your bills over in my area.
Well,
Just a few minutes, I'm gonna tell you what's in.
Whatever you want to do, Mr. Chairman, I'm delighted to be here.
and Mr. Chairman, I would certainly be much obliged if you would just, watch our committee and please give me any pointers before you retire. I'd be glad to take any constructive criticism. Okay, at this time, we're going to call Senate Bill 183. If we could get that, please. Senator Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was excited when I saw I had public safety today at 1 o'clock. I just didn't realize it was in the House and the Senate
Yes, sir.
at the exact same time.
That wasn't planned, by the way.
Oh, no, sir. I don't think you and Chairman Albers would do that to me, but and whenever you're ready, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead, please.
Okay, these Senate Bill 183 is something that everybody here is familiar with. We were well educated on it during last year's session. The first part of this bill does some very important things within the criminal justice system. It requires that those men or women who choose to run for sheriff as the chief law enforcement officer in the 159 counties in Georgia must be qualified as a law enforcement officer prior to running for that seat. This mirrors what we do with district attorneys, judges, and others, that we require these prerequisite qualifications to ensure that we have individuals that can go into those jobs as qualified individuals and provide the service needed in a constitutional manner as required by the United States government and the state of Georgia. The second part of the bill, though it may look somewhat ominous, all we are doing on this part of the bill is we are continuing to allow municipalities and counties to establish school zone cameras, speed zone cameras within school districts in order to make school districts, school zones safer. At first pale, a lot of people think that the best way to regulate speed within a school zone is to have law enforcement officers sitting in school zones with radars. The problem with that is, beyond the manpower issue, is that school zones are usually so narrow and so short that from the time the officer clocks the vehicle to the time that the vehicle stops, we're well beyond the school zone at that time. And it also makes it much more dangerous because then we have two moving vehicles within a school zone where, as we know, with the speed as low as it is in school zones, the fewer vehicles there, the better they are. And as a law enforcement professional, one of the most stressful tasks that we ever had to do were run speed control operations within school zones. We had an incident in Columbus a few years back where, next to Columbus State University, a student was crossing the road outside of a crosswalk and was struck by a vehicle and killed, a college student. And our community seemed to, they reacted and overreacted to a little bit, to where they wanted us to go and start putting law enforcement vehicles in school zones. And then soon they realized that this caused more traffic congestion and other issues. And as technology has progressed, I've been to the one establishment and looked at the technology that's used to test this speed, and was extremely impressed with the 100% accuracy, as long as the equipment is not tampered with. And it also gives much more favorable leeway to the individual when they receive a citation and go to pay it. It tends to be not as expensive, and at the same time, it gets the message across, because a lot of times the individuals that we find speeding through school zones or driving too fast through school zones are in fact young drivers themselves. And this gets the message across without the fear and intimidation that seems to follow those of us who wear a badge around, while at the same time making school zones safer. And as you read through the bill, you'll notice that there are several provisions controlling if you're stopped or if your vehicle receives a citation and you were not driving the vehicle, how those situations are handled, and also as far as how the revenue is dispersed, as far as ticket prices and things of that nature, citation prices, I should say, and things of that nature. And Mr. Chair, I'll stand for any questions from the committee.
Some of that additional language that's mirrored from House Bill 1387 that this committee passed out.
That is correct, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad to support that legislation. I think it's concise and exactly what's needed right now.
Thank you. Number 25, who's that down there?
Me, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Jaspers, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator. Thanks for bringing this. Just two questions. It is not true that these cameras are active after hours and can write citations after school zone hours?
Can they, or do they?
Both.
It could be, but they don't do that. Well, the cameras are only activated during school hours, when school is in session, and when it's the same as any other. If you drive through most neighborhoods, you notice the flashing lights. That means the lowered speed limit is enacted. And when you drive through after school is out and the lights are not flashing, mean that it goes back to the normal speed limit. You do not have to adhere to the school zone speed if the lights aren't flashing.
So I guess it's for the chairman and you too. So that's a change in the policy, because currently they do write tickets after hours if someone's 10 over the posted speed limit.
The cameras in my district, where we have cameras at the Harris County schools, they do not. The cameras are only operated during school hours because of, again, to adhere with the way it's normally done prior to the cameras coming in. A law enforcement officer could not clock someone and write them a citation for speeding through a school zone if school was not in session. And we had to remind some rookies during the summer when they would write somebody a citation going through a school zone when school was not in session.
Well, I think what I've learned in Gordon County, especially in the city of Fairmount, they're writing tickets after hours if they're 10 over the normal road speed limit, let's say 45 or 35. And they're within this code section allows them to do that.
Well, if they're riding based on the normal the normal speed, then they are in compliant with the law. If they're riding under the speed that is established as a school zone speed, then I believe they're outside the
Well,
parameters.
we're splitting the hair there. I'm saying after school zone hours.
Yes,
if
sir.
It's 45 normal DOT time. If they're running 55, the camera can take a picture and send them a citation for speeding.
Yes, sir. That's not the way that the cameras are operated in the areas that I've been in
Well, I
to
think that
look.
the current law allows that. And this has been a very frustrating thing for people because there's no notification that there's a speed zone camera in place except the one that's there
Yeah.
for school zones.
And you and I agree, Chairman. The school zone cameras is what we're calling them, should be used for school zone speeds. They should not be used for the normal policing of the speed limit in front of a school when a school is not in session. At least I believe we're tracking from the inflection in your voice that you and I agree that they should not be
Well,
used outside of.
Well, this, from the way I understand it, and with the folks who represent the school zone lobbyists, they can and do that normally, write these tickets.
Yeah, in my county, we do not do it that way. The individual who is the police chief in Hamilton, who worked for me when I was on the job, he and I have had long discussions about this, and part of that was the narrow role that the cameras play.
Well, I wish, Mr. Chairman, if this bill moves forward, that it prohibited and allowed it only during the time when school zone cameras were flashing, and I had a problem getting that through recently. And also following up, so if you get a ticket with one of these, you can only pay by credit card or some electronic means. You can't pay in cash. They don't have to accept cash. Is that true?
That's my understanding, that some companies do not accept cash if it's paid via mail. If it's paid at the local courthouse or clerk's office, that would be entirely up to the policy of that particular government agency. In Muskogee County, if this is done at the clerk's office, cash is still accepted.
Well, you'd have a better county than the one I represent.
I
Because they
thought-
won't take it, they will not accept cash.
I'm afraid a lot of businesses are moving that way too, and that's a concern of mine, Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Number 27 down here.
The, my recollection from a previous discussion of bills concerning the speed cameras in the school zones, before a citation is issued, is that not reviewed by an officer? Are the cameras automatically just sending these out? I thought there was a review process by an actual officer of the video before a citation was issued.
But there is.
No, sir. That was not. These are civil citations, and the individual who receives a citation can challenge the citation. And again, I go back to practices in areas where I'm familiar with the cameras. When an individual challenges it, they have an opportunity to see the calibration, but most challenges result in dismissal of the citation.
There's due process.
Correct.
There's due process.
Correct.
Well, I think a review by an officer as opposed to them automatically being sent out would correct a lot of the problems.
Well, in Chairman, I understand where you're coming from, and I think that would add a cumbersome. I wouldn't want to be the officer that had to sit and review multiple speed when we have teenagers moving in and out of school districts. But my understanding is that the photo of the vehicle moving through the zone at the speed is taken, and that my experience in the Harris County school systems is when the parent or someone else comes and they challenge a citation, almost 100% of the time the citation is dismissed.
Right.
Because of the fact that it's civil citation. And same thing with school bus cameras with the extended arm camera. I've attended many sessions in municipal court where the judges have dismissed those when they're challenged because of the fact that the citizen is not standing there in front of a heart-beating law enforcement officer debating the speed limit or the speed that they were traveling.
Sometimes there are circumstances that an officer observes in the course of the process. It's more than just a speed involved. So that's the
Absolutely.
reason I was saying that, as I recall from previous discussions, before these citations were issued, they were supposed to be reviewed by a law
Okay.
enforcement officer.
Yes, sir.
I can, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
Chairman Workhouse.
Yeah, want to address, thank you, Chairman, Chairman Jasper's concern on lines one, starting on 154, but really 159. It actually is a little bit more liberal on the current, but the current code and the future code, it seems like if I was in Gordon County and I got a ticket at 10 o'clock at night, I could point to this code section and I don't see how they could give me a ticket.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, there is a different code section in the, that
Okay.
they refer back to allow them to do that.
Okay.
And if there's a conflicting code section dealing with cameras in those areas, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to work with you on correcting that, because again, the problem we ran into is with the officer would actually write a citation outside of school times. And that's where we would have to call them in and have them dismiss the citation because they were in fact outside of the parameters of Georgia law.
Number 17 here, is that Representative Frazier?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sort of concur with Representative Jasper as far as how we are going to be able to recognize citizens that are actually speeding, because I can say this, that I don't know how the cameras are hooked up and how they will relate to the school hours, because sometimes when there is an teacher's workshop, schools are closed, but the cameras, the school camera are flashing. But a lot of time parents and citizens know that school is not in. So if they speed through that flashing light, I can see many of us getting tickets, although we know school is out. So who's regulating these cameras to know the hours of operation? And I understand there is a review committee supposed to look and say, well, okay, we issued 75 tickets today because people were driving by the school zone, but school was closed. So who decides, hey, that was actually a teacher's workshop day, or that was an official holiday? I just see a lot of time being wasted by our constituents having to take time off from work or go pay or go dispute these tickets that are going to be sent out by a camera.
The tickets are actually issued by the technology that works, and the computers within the systems are programmed according to school times. If there happens to be a special project, it's the same way that the flashing lights work now. The flashing lights are established based on school times. So there's not a human being that would be able to go in the morning, flip the switch and turn the flashing lights on, and then at the end of the day, flip the switch and turn them off. They're programmed through traffic management systems, computer systems, so that at an hour before school starts, the lights start flashing. And of course, the signs with the lights say what the speed limit is when lights flashing. And then at the end of the day, an hour after school, they're changed. If there should be some special event at the school where the school district wants to petition the municipality to keep the lights flashing after a certain period of time, then I'm sure there's a process. But what we notice in most high school football games and other things, when we go on a Friday night, those lights are not flashing. So if you drove in front of a high school on a Friday night, you would have to adhere to the normal speed of that road, whether it's 45 or 55, as opposed to the normal school zone speed limit. So this system basically works the same way the flashing lights work. And we have had incidences, as I said before, in my home county in Columbus, where the school district inadvertently had them flipped on during a summer session. And we had to call them and say, hey, if you're not in session, you need to, get with the traffic control individuals and have them turn the computer off because your lights are flashing. And what it was is school had gotten out, they had graduated, but they forgot that one detail.
Let's see, that one detail will cause probably 20 tickets. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it didn't cause any because law enforcement realizes that, and law enforcement officers are trained enough to know that if school's not in, the speed limit on that particular piece of road is is at the standard and not the school zone.
And will those
Right.
tickets be dismissed?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Throughout this entire process, you do have due process.
You do have due process through the process, just like I said, with the arm, the camera on the school bus, due process. I used to have those types of citations would go out certain times of the month, and I would have 8 or 6 out of 200,000 people call that may have gotten them.
Right.
And they'd say, I don't quite understand it. And I would direct them to meet me in municipal court in Columbus. And I would let the judge know that these individuals were contesting those buses, and the judges dismissed those without question.
Mr. Chairman, we're not talking about jaywalking tickets here. We're talking about speeding in a school zone.
Yes, sir, you're
We're
right.
talking about a very serious issue. And, some people are going to bitch and gripe and moan about things. But if you're speeding in a school zone, kind of, my opinion, you ought to slow down. You ought to be ticketed for that.
Well, my concern, Mr. Chair, is that if you look in a city like Atlanta and you come from a school, the traffic's going to be going fairly slow to begin with.
Right.
So when you start slowing down, but the high school in my county is on a 2-lane road, and it's a long stretch of road, and there's a lot of opportunity to pick up some speed on that road. And we have a lot of kids, and the middle school's right behind the high school, or as I know it, as a junior high school. And there's a lot of opportunities for people to speed through there. And when the lights aren't flashing, people do go through there really quick. And early in the mornings, when the lights are flashing, we still have issues with people going through there pretty quick. And as a father and a grandfather, automobiles scare me to death in all ways.
We got this lit up like a Christmas tree again. So let me go through here. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. I just have 2 quick questions. So
Yes.
to confirm this is the municipality can authorize this. Is that what's new? Because school systems could already authorize these, right?
It was, well, no, ma'am.
No?
It required a partnership. If for the municipality, the county, depending on who was responsible for the school, they would try to have those conversations. But the jurisdiction has always rested with the municipality, because the cameras are set up on state right of way in
Mhm.
most cases to test the speed. So this actually has nothing to do with the school system. The school systems really don't have an investment in the process there.
Okay, but have we had legislation before where school systems could have put these in, or am I just remembering that wrong?
I think there was legislation, there was no legislation, I think, which was the problem.
Okay,
On a state level. I think there may have been some agreements on local levels, but on state level, there had not, no ma'am. And I think that's one of the reasons the confusion came up about who was responsible for the cameras. And it was wherever the school sat. If it was a rural school outside of a municipality, then the county would have to approve the cameras. And if it was within a municipality, that municipality would have to approve the camera, along with DOT permitting and other things. So with the state's involvement, we felt it was easier to make sure that it was clear who was responsible for the hardware and the camera.
okay, thank you. I have one more quick follow-up
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
So if you're at a football game and someone is speeding beyond the regular speed, like if it's 60 miles an hour and they're going 80,
Yes, ma'am.
so that the cameras aren't on, they're not going to catch that. Is
Uh,
that, or I'm asking you,
The
I guess.
cameras, right, the cameras should not be on to catch that. That should be the responsibility of the law enforcement agency in whatever jurisdiction that is.
Okay, so they're set only for the school zone speed limits.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that, I think it line 159 through 162, I believe, talks about that. If there were some special program, like if they had summer school for some reason, then of course the school could work with the equipment and the technology and set it up for that. If there was some reason that children would be at the school.
Yeah, it seems like maybe you might want to do that sometimes.
ma'am.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
and we do it with the flashing light system sometimes based on summer school and other things going on.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. In some year-round schools.
24 down there. Who-
That's mine.
Full
Thank
leader
you,
lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I realize you may have said this a couple times, but I need to be clear on this. Is the camera attached to the blinking light? Are they connected?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let me on those lines that you just referenced, the line 159 to 162. 1 hour before, during, and 1 hour after normal hours of school operation. Or programs for care and supervision of students before school, after school, or during vacation.
Periods as provided under code section 2-2-65. And I don't have that code section in front of me right now. But again, like I said, at no time, if there's a school function going on and a legitimate function, we're not talking about kids hanging out after school in study hall. These systems, the ones that I've looked at have never been put in operation.
And I can appreciate that. And I feel the same way about my county that you feel about yours. And I'm not in his county, which is good because I think that we do it fairly. But what I'm concerned about is that we have this terminology here in code that that leaves it open for communities who maybe need cash. That I'm a little scared about this.
And I understand that. And there are systems, and I know our former state trooper understands that there are levers within the system that if individuals attempt to practice revenue-based policing, that Department of Public Safety has always been really, really good at snatching permits. We've had cities in this state move city limit signs. We've had them attempt to base their city budgets off of citations. And we all know where the speed trap is, and we all know where the junkyard is in South Georgia. And we've all driven through Pooler. So there are levers within the Georgia law to prevent that kind of behavior.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you. Just to follow on that, Floor Leader Lott was saying, so what is the lever in here that would present overuse to a state law enforcement to that, and how would they go about withdrawing one of these from a county?
Well, the lever looks at the total percentage of funds in a county's budget. And normally the ones we've had in the past, I had one in Waverly Hall, I think it was year before last, where a citizen complained that it was a speed trap. And Department of Public Safety came in, the city of Waverly Hall had to surrender a copy of their city budget and of course, revenue report. The Department of Public Safety determined that there was a disproportionate amount of their budget coming from citations. So at that time, they had to have a hearing in front of DPS to explain that, and their inability to explain would have cost them the ability to run radar, which is the only way in court you're ever going to establish legitimate speeding.
Yes, sir. And I
Technology.
agree, you're right.
Yes, sir.
It's the lever there is a speeding ticket.
Correct.
There's no lever in this, nor is there a lever for a camera on a Leo's car for violation of tag out of date.
Yes, sir.
They're not involved in that lever. There are specific legal ones that do that, but this doesn't include that.
Well, this does have a citation tied to it. And when it goes to the municipality, the revenue from the citation would be a revenue stream that the city would have to report. And based on the formulas used by DPS on population and other things, I think it would be easy enough to show that a disproportionate amount of the city's revenue is coming from one of these types of instruments, which again, I think it would stand out, like a red blob. If you looked at a school camera, which in Harris County, we have probably 12 schools, and we have 2 of these systems set up within the school. And if we got a disproportionate amount of county revenue, or it would be the city of Hamilton actually, revenue, then I think it would absolutely draw the attention. And like I said before, people tend to be pretty quick on the trigger complaining about citations that they receive for speeding more than anything.
Well, thank you. And I'm not in favor of your bill.
I
That's very
understand.
clear.
No, sir. I understand
But, so
completely.
why are we turning whatever is from the school system to a county. I mean, because the first thing I'm going to do if I get a citation is go to the school that's adjacent to. I think that's what citizens are going to do first, even though the citation may say go to
Yes, sir.
wherever in Chattanooga or wherever to take care of this.
The school system is not in control of the speed zone in front of their schools today. That's municipalities. The roads that they travel on either belong to the city or they belong to the state.
Well, I certainly understand that.
Yes,
But I'm
sir.
saying, but in before your bill, the school system had to be involved in the placement of those. And now we're taking that away from them.
The school system did not have to be involved. In some cities, there may have been agreements with certain school systems, but in the ones that I deal with, they don't have to be. I think the biggest issue we have with the schools, and they're concerned about this, is that green monster. And I'm not talking about envy, I'm talking about dollars. And the responsibility of public safety rests on the municipality. It rests on the county. It rests with the state. It does not rest with the school district unless the school district has a law enforcement agency. And that responsibility of safety rests with that school district within boundaries of the school district.
Okay, I understand.
Yes, sir.
And we all agree safety is
And they,
important.
well, and they
But
have no
But
jurisdiction
I want
on
you to look
state
at line
roads.
163.
Yes, sir.
It says prior to the placement of device within a school zone, whose school zone such, where an automated traffic enforcement is to be placed, shall first apply for and secure a permit from DOT.
Correct.
So they are involved in it. They've got them do the initial, and under the current law, that's what they do.
You're saying the DOT, each school within whose school zone such, you're saying prior to the school zone would have to, I mean, the school district would have to.
Currently they
Right,
do.
right. I think there are three. In the one in Harris, the city of Hamilton worked with the DOT to establish this. I think if there's any, again, if there's any ill with the school zone, I mean, with the school district, then it comes down to revenue. I've never understood, and it came out of, I think, DeKalb County, where there was some conflict, or maybe Cobb, where there was some conflict, where the school district would not allow the cameras to be put there.
That's right.
And their reasoning for not allowing was told to me in a meeting that it was revenue. And Mr. Chairman, I think you know me well enough to know that, and you and I both agree on public safety, revenue is the last thing on my mind. But my problem is when I start looking at it from a law enforcement logical mindset, I understand that asphalt belongs to the taxpayers of that municipality or to the taxpayers of the state of Georgia. That right of way in most cases, whether either belongs to the municipality or belongs to the state of Georgia, it does not belong to the school district. And therefore, if we're sitting in the room and we're discussing putting a rocket on the moon, then Randy Robertson as a law enforcement officer is not the guy that needs to be at the table. And in these public safety discussions, every other part of public safety rests on the shoulders of the municipality, as should this one.
All right, Senator, hold just one second. I've got a question for Chairman Powell here. We had some legislation you sponsored last year that's over in the Senate that we passed out of this committee.
The issue that the gentleman's talking about deals with some of the school systems in Georgia are not signing off. They're supposed to sign off if for the red light cameras. This comes on the heels of that camera on the swing out arms on buses.
Right.
And because of that, the DOT, they've got to have authorization from the schools.
Right.
And we've got about, best I can tell, about 4 counties in the state that they're holding back on allowing school speed zone cameras until they can get a piece of action. Now, the problem that is the local governments are the ones that pay for everything. They pay for the vendor pays for the cameras and all of that. Law enforcement does all the other parts to it. And, it just seems to be a little bit disingenuous that the schools want money for safety, and this is all about creating a safer school zone.
I only said that because of interest of time. We did pass that measure out of this committee
We
last
passed
year.
that bill out of here and it's stranded over in the Senate.
Okay.
And I'm just sitting here thinking this would be a dandy good bill if we would delay action to let me get an amendment ready for this bill to take care of that issue.
And that wouldn't hurt my feelings at all, since my last two bills in public safety in the Senate are just starting to be heard.
Okay. All right.
But I'll tell you, I think this covers what you were looking for, Chairman, in the bill that went across last time. And I think you and I both have been working hard to break that one loose that's stuck over there.
One more, then we're going to call the question. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to go all the way back up to the beginning of the bill, lines number 1 through number 4. Let's talk about the sheriff. What are the current qualifications, since it's election year now, and we have a lot of folks running for sheriff? What's the current qualifications to run for a sheriff now that we are changing them?
No, ma'am. The only thing I'm changing is that they have to go through the police academy and show that they can be a post-qualified law enforcement officer, which all sheriffs have to be. My understanding is to be a sheriff, you have to be a resident of Georgia. You have to be a resident of the county that you are running for, I believe it's 12 months. It may be 24. And there may be an age limit on there. And so what we're asking is, since district attorneys have to be qualified beyond those parameters, as do judges and other members of the judicial system, we're asking that sheriffs be required to be qualified also to run for office as a judge, or DA would have to.
But aren't they currently they have to be qualified?
No, ma'am. Right now, they do not.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. What would be the desire of the committee?
I would like for us to delay action on this if it's the will of the committee, so that we can get an amendment ready that would clean up that other situation for the license applications for these cameras. Or suspend action.
Is there a second? All those in favor? All opposed? Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you. We suspended.
Yeah.
Senator Mullis, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Sorry to keep you waiting there.
Quite all right.
Come right on up. Senate Bill 259. We've got a sub here that we're gonna,
Whoops. Mr. Chairman, always glad to be in front of this auspicious, amazing, impressive committee. And glad to be here today. And also, I'm always glad to be accessible and able to help my colleagues in the House with anything I have, like this bill, that my friends may want to adjust or move forward with some other issues. So with that, would you like to give me, let me tell you the base, and then one of my friends will tell you about the amendment, because I have no idea what's in the amendment. I'm good with it.
Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for letting me to come before you. Summary of the base of the bill is brought to us by our good friends with Georgia Carry, or now they're called the Georgia Second Amendment group. And they're wonderful people, not like some of those crazy people. But they're wonderful and do a lot of good, and I don't care anymore. In fact, I've never cared, but I'm glad to be here. But the NRA and Georgia Carry are wonderful people, and they do good in helping us protect the Second Amendment. But the base of the bill simply make sure that data, information about weapons carry license permit is not shared with anybody except the jurisdiction and where they get all their information. We're kind of getting tired of that kind of information shared, and they sell it off to other groups, and then it just creates havoc for us all. So we want to kind of keep that private within that jurisdiction. Secondly, this prohibits government from allowing law-abiding citizens that believe in their weapon to be able to shoot it on their private property, provided they're doing that in a wise manner. You can't shoot at houses, you can't shoot at people, and this has a minimum of 10 acres, and usually it's going to be a lot bigger if somebody's shooting a weapon, but they still have to do it in a law-abiding way. Thirdly, with all the weapons that are seized by the police and so forth, and we're glad they do, especially with the criminal element out there. And if that weapon is in good standing, meaning it's not in bad shape, or it's not illegal like a sawed-off shotgun, then this requires them within a year's period to auction those off and make sure hello, my friend, make sure that we get those back out of the hands of the law enforcement officers and let them go back into public society for law-abiding citizens. Again, if the serial numbers are erased or the gun's in bad shape, or if it's illegal, that won't be allowed. It's just for the legal weapons that they seize over a year's period. And we want them to be able to auction and keep that money for the general budget of that municipality or county government, and then for the rest of, or maybe in the law enforcement. To be honest with you, I don't know who receives that money, but to get those weapons back out to law-abiding citizens. And that's the basics of the original bill. My friend Alan Powell has the addition to the original bill.
Okay. Go ahead, Chairman Powell, if you want to jump on there and add to
I
this.
just want to tell everybody what a pleasure it is for me to sit next to my dear friend, the Senate Rules Chairman, and in his waning days as a professional. What a great pleasure it is. And I want to thank him for bringing this bill forth and allowing us to amend it to make it an even better bill. I'm going to go through the sections for the benefit of the committee. You can pretty well tell the difference. In the original version, section 1, we removed churches from the unauthorized locations. When we did this 7 years ago, it was at the behest of the then governor, who had a real anxiety problem about churches and wanted to be in unauthorized places for carry. It has created somewhat of a major dilemma. It's made a lot of the churches disobey one of the commandments about lying, because quite frankly, a lot of our churches, they want to have somebody there in the day of the open shooters. And a lot of the churches had to appoint people basically outside the realm of their jurisdictions. Usually some of the deacons did it on their own. I understand and haven't been told, but that the Georgia Baptist Convention is in support of this. So basically what we're doing is we're treating churches as private property. They can decide whether they want someone or who to have a weapon or not on their property. And that's what section 1 does. Section 2 deals with the probate judges. As you know, even though we're going to be passing permitless carry or constitutional carry, we're still going to leave the process for a concealed weapons permit for the benefit, 2 benefits. One would be the benefit of reciprocity with certain states that still require that. Secondly, would be to circumvent the Brady Act on a waiting period, because you will have already, by virtue of that license, have had your background check. This says, but basically allows it to probate judges that they shall be authorized to implement online application process, and that they can accept the weapons license renewal application via first-class mail. Second part of section 2 deals with this, my good friend and dear Senator Mullis had said, the database prohibition. Multi-jurisdictional means more than one department or agency, and that they basically cannot build a database, and it allows for cause of action if you have been violated. Section 3 deals with the prohibition on discharging on acreage. 10 acres is what we've got in here. This may at some point during the process go to the what is considered to be the conservation use limit, but 10 acres is what we're dealing with as the senator had proposed. Basically, this would be for firing ranges and things like that that people have. Section 4. This deals with the disposition of property seized, as the senator it spoke of in his bill. It basically says that these governments, that they will sell every 12, they'll auction off every 12 months for the disposition of these weapons that have been seized. And that's if they have an inventory of 5 or more firearms. Purpose of that, quite frankly, and you'll see it in a couple of spaces. Yes, you as an individual, you can bid on these, but you have to know that you might bid it, you may be the winning bidder, but that weapon is going to have to be delivered to a federally firearms licensed dealer. You don't think you can just go to an auction and buy the weapon, because you still got to be background checked under the Brady Act. Section 5 deals with the Brady Handgun Violence, part of that Brady Handgun Violence Act. Excuse me. In respect to prohibitions on mental health cases, involuntary hospitalization and such. A lot of language in here that, quite frankly, the attorneys have drafted up. But the gist of this is, this came to front to me last year. I had a young man in North Georgia that he had a illness when he was a young man, and I'm talking about in his teens. And the physical illness that he had created a mental condition, as some of these things would do. As he grew out and was cured from the physical illness, then his mental illness, or what was determined, disappeared. Well, it's just basically a miserable process to return you, to reinstate your constitutional rights. And this language that you see through this section 5 is the process, the judicial process of regaining your constitutional rights, and that the adjudication that you are not and no longer mentally unstable. Section 6 also deals with the mental health. That basically it just says that the courts shall provide notification to any person admitted to a facility under that subsection, and the prohibitions pursuant to that. Basically, that the courts will do a notification to somebody that's being committed. Same language in section 7. Section 8. This deals with a subject that has been very near and dear to a lot of us. We've talked about it for years. On the Georgia books, we have the declared state of an emergency. And that state of emergency would allow for the seizure of your weapons and basically your rights, quite frankly. Yes, it's never happened. Do we ever think it would happen? No, we don't. But you know what? It's better to stand on the side of caution for our rights. And what Section 8 does, it basically stops any prohibition. It stops any seizure during a state of an emergency. And if you look through that, it specifies ammunition, equipment, sales, prohibits any prohibition on the manufacture, sale, transfer of firearms, ammunition, suspends, revokes weapon carry licenses. What all these does is definitions. It would stop any of those during a state of an emergency. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what my dear friend and the senator's substitute does. Good 2A bill, a cleanup bill that goes along with our other actions.
Questions, number 18 out here. 18.
Wow, it's a big bill. So I have just a few questions to walk through it. So most of this, I think we'd heard from from Chairman Jasper's bill, but so section 1, treating churches as private property. I just want to walk through it. That's so you're saying now the way the law currently is, if the church has someone outside their property bearing a gun.
Right now, there's a prohibition under current law. There's a prohibition to have a weapon on church property.
Okay.
This basically says churches can make that decision themselves,
Right.
who
Right.
they'll allow.
Right. So they would, if they don't want them, they need to post a sign.
That's
saying-
exactly right.
Okay. All right.
Or let it be known.
Yes.
And with all respect, in rural Georgia, there are probably a lot of people in the congregation that are packing already, just because they believe in it. Whoops, sorry.
Um,
Amen.
right, and then jumping at, so, and I'm sorry, so what is it with the probate court? That will do online, so they have been able to do online applications before, is that right?
Because of some of the problems that we've seen in years, that some of the probate judges, especially during this pandemic, a lot of them were having to schedule times or not. And this basically gives them a tool that they can allow for online applications. And also that an application can be sent via first-class mail for renewal.
The database prohibition, so has this been a problem where some counties are sharing?
In the state of Georgia, one of the things that we've always been very cautious, and that's the building of databases concerning people's Second Amendment rights. And this is just to reinforce that even more in this day of the multi-jurisdictional between departments, that nobody is supposed to build a database. It's none of the government or anybody else's business to know who has a permit or a particular firearm.
So you're saying, because we are doing other multi-jurisdictional things, you just want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
That's exactly right.
And then, I just have a question about why is it important to sell guns? Like, why do we need them out of the hands of law enforcement, these kinds of things?
Are you answering all right?
And you would be talking about what part?
I'm just saying.
You're talking about section 4?
Yeah, section 4.
Well, section 4, a lot of your jurisdictions, confiscate weapons and such. These weapons build up. What are they going to do with it? Destroy them? Well, quite frankly, there's an awful lot of quality weapons, antique weapons, parts and the such that are being destroyed for no good purpose. This allows a straightforward process that if you have more than 5 weapons in your possession, then you need to have an auction at least once every 12 months. Proceeds go back to the jurisdiction that has that, and the weapons are then delivered to a federal law enforcement licensed dealer. So that everybody still has to go. It's not like going out and having an auction and the same folks that had used the weapons or lost the weapons that are out there buying them back. It's got to go through a process. And for several reasons. One is that law enforcement agencies, they don't need to have warehouses of weapons built up, because then that becomes a security risk for them.
All right. Any,
I'm sorry, and then that section 5, I just wanted to see if we could talk through, you said the physical illness called mental illness, but, and then for gaining their constitutional right there and stable. So I guess I just need to read that in more detail, so I can do that while.
Yeah, you probably need to read that into more detail. I can tell you the gist of that, because that's an awful lot of line items
Yeah.
that was written by some awful good lawyers, and it deals with how you regain your constitutional rights. Right now, if you've been prohibited by the Federal Brady Act, I mean, literally, the old terminology, an act of Congress, don't mean anything. It's the most difficult thing, but there is a specific way that you can regain your rights if you'd ever lost them due to mental health issues. And this is what that language does.
number 22, Chairman Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the chairman, I have a question similar to the question that was just asked. I want to, obviously, everyone here, everyone who is pro Second Amendment, like myself, we want to make sure that people that have lost the right to bear arms, be they felons or be they individuals who are unsafe to society, that we enforce that. So my question is similar to the question that was just asked. I want to make sure, so there is a multitude of the court hearings involved, this process for an individual to gain back their right when they have when they have exhibited real mental issues. I wanted you to explain that a little more fully as well.
Well, I can stumble through it as best I can. I've, given the general gist of it. This is a legal process. If you have been involuntarily hospitalized.
Correct.
This is a process that, as you look through it, that the circumstances of hospitalization, whatever doctor's records and such like that, all of these things are provided. And then it goes through, it just basically goes through the legal proceedings of filing to the courts. And
Right.
once that information is satisfied to the judge that you're no longer nuts or a danger to society, then you have then been reinstated your constitutional right.
It looks like all of their records are available to the court.
It is to the court.
All necessary information for the court to make a judicious decision is available to them.
Not an easy process, but it is a necessary process. And we did not have this on the books. When I spoke a while ago, I ran into a young man last year from North Georgia up my way. This guy, when he was 18 years of age, he had some sort of a physical illness. It had some kind of ramifications on his mental ability. He was hospitalized, institutionalized. When he turned 30-something years of age, all of that had been, illness had gone away, mental health had been clarified, but yet still there was no way for him to reinstitute his constitutional rights. That's what this process does.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to stop you right there. Our time in this room has come to an end, and we're going to have to adjourn this meeting and reconvene at 3:30 in room 606. 3:30 in
We
606.
might have a chance to move this bill forward if there's no other questions.
Okay. All right.
I agree. I can't come back.
The chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to pass.
Motion made, do pass, and a second. Any further discussion
You gonna carry it?
on the substitute to House Bill,
I'll let you-
excuse me, I'm sorry, Senate Bill 259, LC 393447S. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries. Bill does pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
We-
appreciate the House perfecting this bill
Sir.
today.
We will reconvene our meeting at 3:30 in 606.